Cool. So, Maya, thank you for joining me on my brand new podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Name is Maya Martinez. I'm an artist. I just graduated school at Heron in Indianapolis just this month. It was really exciting. I did ceramics and sculpture. Um, I didn't think I was gonna originally go to school for art, but I kind of stuck with it. Thought I was gonna draw, but I changed my mind, and now I'm here. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So, obviously, me and you know this, but people would not that are listening. But we are of the same bloodline. We are cousins.
Yeah, we're
So,
related.
so we inherited some kind of creative gene. You think?
I think so. Like my dad, he draws. Um, my mom thinks she can paint, so that's something, you know. That counts.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know that about your mom that she paints, and I honestly didn't know your dad drew at all.
Yeah, he draws a little, and then my mom was taking like these. They were honestly probably like those wine and paint classes. But what she paints, I'm like, what is going on? And it's like a morphine elephant into a galaxy scene, and I'm like, okay, I see the creativity.
Yo, that sounds kind of dope though. That's like
Yeah,
uh,
they're nice. I like them.
hell yeah. Sorry, there's some noise in the background, but yeah, that's funny. So I guess going a little bit more into your background, where are you from?
I grew up in Gary, Indiana, my entire life. You know, right by you guys in Hammond. Um, went to school. I went to school in Hammond for a while, and then went to school in Gary for a while, and then went to school in Maryville for high school. So I feel like my parents liked me to be more so in Catholic school and private school than they preferred. Then for a while I was in public school, like in the Gary school system for just like I guess 5 years. So it wasn't very long, but that's probably where I had like most of my friends, most of my like creative, open mindset develop versus being in private school with a bunch of white people. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Drain, right, out in Maryville. That's where
Mhm.
you went.
Yeah.
That was
Mhm.
that was like that was pretty fancy school in our area.
Really?
I mean, we considered it so like Hobart's like that's the city I'm from. Hobart is not bad. It's like pretty
Mhm.
nice, but it's like they're all kind of halfway country people. So
Yeah.
they see like private school people and it's like, oh, that's the fancy school, you know? So
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's I mean that's it's still a good place to go, I'm sure, right?
I feel like the education was okay. I feel like I could have got it at public school. Um, and the people, you know, who cares? This I could have got that from anywhere.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. So your uncle, I mean my uncle, your dad
Mhm.
is my mom's brother,
Mhm.
and your mom, and then you grew up with what one sister, so the family was of four, right?
Yeah, for the most part, I only briefly remember being in the house with my older brother since they were way older. My
Yeah.
oldest brother was already out the house, and then my second, like my youngest brother, he was I don't even know how old he was when I was a kid. So he was only there for probably the first maybe 6 years of my life. I really don't remember him being there at all. So it really was just us four most of the time.
Yeah, I forgot. I forgot honestly because he would come around Jameer, right? Is the younger one.
Mm-hmm.
He would
Yes.
come around to some family things, but after a couple years, he was, as far as my memory goes, he was out. He was out.
Mm-hmm. He bounces around a lot. I think right now he's in Texas, from what I've heard.
Nice. What does he do now?
I don't know actually. I don't know. I couldn't tell you what either of my brothers do.
Oh, okay. So they're not, they don't keep in touch that much.
Not often. I would think that a lot of times me and my siblings are a lot more strange than what we like to think we are. Um, so we don't really communicate a whole bunch. But I like closest to my sister, but even then, we don't talk all the time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. How was that? I mean, describe like your family dynamic, I guess, a little bit.
um, I would say for me, it was very quiet and by myself most of the time. Like I was the youngest, so I tend to just listen to my parents when they're like, "No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that." So I was just always in my room, like doing nothing. I don't recall watching a whole lot of TV when I was a kid. I just feel like I just would sit in my room and probably just go to sleep at some point, and then I don't know. And my sister was the more like wants to be popular girl, and oh, it's lame to hang out with your little sister. So I didn't really talk to her much either. And dad's always at work, mom's always at work, and I'm just like, I'm just chilling. I'm like, I like to be at school because it's the only time I get to talk to people. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Your parents worked, worked really hard.
hmm
And growing up, your dad was a huge role model for me, and your parents are still to me role models in the example that they've set as far as like being together for so long, and
hmm
they're just like strong, confident people. How was it
yeah.
growing up with them?
Yes, they are like that on the outside and even on the inside. A lot of times they were these strong people who never let their guards down. And sometimes I thought maybe that's where the rift was, is I can't see that sympathetic side of my parents. A lot of times I'm seeing the tough parents who are like preparing me for life. Like you got to be strong, so I'm not gonna be weak on you because this is how it's gonna be. And as a kid, you're like, I don't get it. Like I don't know. I want a hug or something, you know? So it was kind of weird, but now as I'm older and I think about those things, I'm like, I understand why they did the things that they did. And even now, I see more of a full range of emotion from them, which is interesting. It's still something I think about a lot. I'm like, in the first 18 years of my life, I'm like, I never seen so many emotions from you people. And I'm like, now it's everywhere. And I like it, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I missed out.
Yeah, yeah, because they were both military, right? I mean, I didn't. Your mom's military as well as your dad, right?
Just my dad.
Oh,
I think he was in the Marines for, I think it was only 4 or 5 years. And he did the tour of Iraq and was in Desert Storm. Um, and that plays a huge role into why he is who he is now. Him struggling with his mental illnesses because of that, and just everything from that. And I don't know. I think about it a lot of times too, because I'm just like, man, that's crazy. I could never. I just want to go back in time and like tell him don't go, because I'm just like, God, this seems awful. But yeah, that really made him. That's really a huge chunk of his life that made him who he is and how he responds to things now.
yeah, geez, yeah, I bet. And it sounds. I mean, maybe he's worked through some stuff, but he's never. I mean, it sounds like he like being more emotional now. It sounds like he's maybe worked through some of those things over time, but it did seem like he was always closed off on that topic, and I could only imagine why. And I never knew that he had he was working through mental illnesses,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, and you don't have to talk about that, but if you don't want to. But I guess for me, I never knew that.
Yeah, he's he's just so funny. Like he's so funny and silly, and likes to be a happy kind of person. So it makes sense why it's like you rarely get to see those moments. And like I was saying, like I didn't see those moments until these past like 2, 3 years of my life. Um, so I'm like still trying to work even through that. I'm just like, oh gosh, this is a lot. And same with my mom. Like she was with him after the military, but still, like she's known him way longer than I've known him, and on that emotional level too. So her opening up about the things that she's experienced too. I'm just like, oh, gosh, getting to know people. How crazy.
Yes, I mean, you never think about it, but you first off, you kind of never know your parents, like really, because you don't know them
Hmm.
before you were born, and then at the same time, we forget as kids that they're also growing into something
Hmm.
else as we're growing into ourselves,
Yeah,
um, and it's like, oh shit, like we're all human, like they're humans, they're not the superheroes I built them up to be.
literally. Yeah. I feel like, yeah, because my parents, they were, while they weren't the talkative type, they were definitely the ones who wanted to spoil and like make sure you got everything that you wanted and you were always comfortable. Um, so I never would like. I feel like that was when I was more selfish when I was a kid, and I'm just like, I don't understand why you can't do these things for me. You're my mom. You're my dad. You do this, and now I'm just like, good thing I'm not a kid anymore. God, that sounds terrible.
Yeah. I mean, all kids are like that.
Yeah.
They don't. They kind of built that way.
Mhm.
Um. So your parents worked so much, and they're, like I said, they're pretty big figures in our family.
Mhm.
Um. But what I remember is, since they were working so much, you had to spend a lot of time with our grandma, who we called
Mhm.
mom. And so, how was that growing up?
Um, I definitely. It's weird trying to think about all the time I spent over there. Like I just remember going there after school and them always picking me up from school, and then we would always drink chocolate milk and then have either soup or pasta, and then go upstairs and watch TV. And I just remember doing that like every day, 5 days a week. And now I'm just like, oh gosh, I just know when I go to my grandparents' house, they're gonna want me to eat food all day, and I'm just like, I can't. I'm like, I can't eat all this food. So now I'm just like thinking about it. I'm like, wow, I've lived a long life. God, I feel old whenever I think about it.
Oh man, how old are you, by the way?
22.
22. Oh god, you're so young. Oh my god, that's awesome. No, I mean 22. Yeah, thinking back to 22, obviously I don't feel like a lot older, but like in those years that have passed,
Hmm.
it feels like a lot of time. But yeah, I mean, as far as, so did you inherit, like, did you get to know mom a lot? Because like personally, there's a language barrier between me and mom, and I always just saw, she was always kind of
Hmm.
like a figure, like almost like she's like the matriarch of our family, is effectively what it is. So it wasn't
Hmm.
so much on a personal level. Did you ever get to know her on a personal level, I guess, or what?
I would say yes and no. Like I feel like I know things about mom. Like she taught me how to sew. She taught me how to use all the machines. We would make tortillas together. Like we would do things together and like talk a little bit, but I feel like it's more so in the past 4 years where I've done my most learning between my grandparents, and language is definitely a barrier since I don't fluently speak Spanish at all. But it's almost like a give and take. Like whatever they don't know in English, I say it in English. Whatever I don't know in Spanish, they'll show me what it is in Spanish. So it's kind of like this back and forth, and I think it's working. Like I don't know, learning that Pop was a welder, and he said he was going to show me how to weld, and learning like all these things that Mom used to do when she was younger. I'm like, I feel like now is when I'm doing my most learning. Um, Probably because I listen more.
So you like just going back and visiting, or is it like you call them and chat with them every once in a while?
Going back and visiting mostly. I usually try to call Mom and my other grandma. Usually, not really that much. Probably once every other month do I call them because I usually go home like once a month. So I usually go and see both of them. So yeah.
That's pretty cool. And so for people listening, um, you know, our grandma that we're talking about is is Mexican. That's your Mexican side of the family,
Mhm.
and you are mixed, and so you have Mexican and Black
Mhm.
sides of your family. So how was that experience?
Um, I would say within the family, it wasn't challenging at all. I feel like both sides of our family got along really well. But in school, that's when I would experience this rift of like people wanting me to choose sides, people wanting me to choose my identity, which is it was interesting because I always grew up talking and hanging out with both sides of my family all the time. Because both sides of my family are huge. Both sides, we both have a lot of cousins. I both have several aunts and uncles. I'm like both sides. I have a lot of people to talk to, and being in school, it was always like, oh, you're not Mexican, you're black. Oh, you're not black, you're Mexican. Oh, you're not, you're white. You're Middle Eastern. And I'm like, okay.
Oh
Now
gosh,
we're getting far off the mark here. So
yeah.
it it was always I feel like as a child it was always something and always somebody having to be like you don't belong, and to me now when I think about it, I'm like it it's sort of a minor issue on the grand scheme of things when I think about all the privileges I have being light skinned and being a woman of color, but colorism works in my favor, and it's just like all these privileges I already naturally have. So I'm like, the issues that of me feeling like, oh, I don't belong, oh, nobody like thinks I am with them. I'm just like, it is an issue, but I can put that on the back burner for things that are actually very serious. And then until those get solved, then maybe we can revisit it. So,
Yeah, and so when you say very serious, you're saying in the grand scheme of things from the like national global perspective.
yeah, even because even in America, I don't. There's several issues that I find worse than feeling like black people are saying I'm not black and they're saying that I don't belong. Like it's like okay, I know I'm black. Okay, I don't need your approval. So let's skip over that and try to fix all these other issues like police brutality, like incarceration, like just day to day racism, like all these other things that people deal with on a daily basis. And that goes the same for me being Hispanic, me being Mexican, is here are these issues with immigration, with the laws that we have now, with everything. So I'm like, let's think about those. I can let go of my little grudge. I might have a pity party or something, but that's okay. you know.
Oh man, no, I mean, like I definitely sympathize. Like it's we did grow up with a certain level of a privilege, right?
Mhm.
And obviously, I have no insight as to what it is to be black in America, but as far as like being accepted into certain cultures, I think that's so great that you were able to like to just all right, I'm that's not that important, and I'm pretty like
Mhm.
you seem so confident in yourself right now that you're talking, and
Mhm.
that's really cool. Because when people are dealing with those things, it can be the biggest thing that they're dealing with, even though
Yeah.
like the world, like you say, like in relation to the world's problems, of course, it's going to be tiny, but like everything that the worst thing that's happened to you is still the worst thing that you've ever experienced. So,
Mhm.
but as far as, I mean, that perspective, I think that's really cool. But at the same time, it's not unfounded, and I wouldn't like, I deal with stuff like that, like not Mexican enough for the Mexicans and not American enough for the Americans.
Mhm.
But I feel like everyone has an issue, like some kind of way, like some kind of situation like that.
Yeah.
But growing up in Gary, did you ever see that firsthand as far as, uh, you know, police brutality and etc.?
Um. In Gary, no, not really. And this could just be the area in which I grew up in, which is closer to the beach. I grew up in Miller. Um, so I wasn't really, honestly, I can't recall ever seeing too much going on where I was from. But this could also be that I was always just in the house or at school. Like, I was not allowed to go out and walk around and play. Like, I was not allowed to go walk down to McDonald's and go get food with friends. I was not, no. Even if it's a 5 minute walk, it's like, no, I was not allowed to do that. And a lot of times, the people I was friends with, it was not like how my parents were when they were growing up in the 80s, where everybody you went to school with all lived in the same block. Most of my friends, we were scattered all over the place. I'm like, we would have to drive to go see each other anyways. So most of my time was spent in the house. Yeah. So a lot of my knowledge and learning things about police brutality are coming from media, are coming from TV, and just hearing about it through friends.
Yeah, yeah, and people talk about. Did you ever get like the talk? Like people talk about the talk about
Oh
police.
yeah. Mhm.
Have you?
I I didn't. I If I did, I don't remember it. I don't know. I didn't. I feel like I got the talk about how people would look at me, um, and just dealing with like more of the talk about colorism
Mm,
and the talk about being a woman. Like I've gotten those talks, but not about police brutality. No.
that makes sense. I mean, yeah, that's interesting. I feel like my mom's like very similar to your dad in like not that she wanted to prepare me for us for
Mhm.
things, and but she's like scared of everything. Like her approach is like being scared, and so I remember her like not like having a sit down, but like listen to the police or they're gonna shoot you. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
that's kind of not what they're supposed to do. But
Yeah.
like it's interesting that she always like communicated about the police like that, and I never made a big deal of it. So I didn't really understand the concept
Mhm.
of like police brutality as an actual like national issue. I just thought that's how police.
Mhm.
I should be afraid of police. Like so, when I started, like similar to you, a lot of my education came through the media.
Yeah. I can remember as a kid, like my parents watching like cops and those other police shows and just being like, See, they're really violent, and you see that they get really violent when you don't listen to them. So you just gotta listen to them. You just gotta do everything they say. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Like that's it. Period. I'm just like now, if I ever see an episode of that show, I'm just like, this is unnecessary. This is so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it sounds like it wasn't like a talk. It was just like the way they
Mhm.
talked about it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. That's pretty crazy. And so, being, I guess, bringing it back a little bit to being um, kind of like an isolated personality, or just kind of being with yourself a lot. Is that kind of where you first discovered like that you were creative, or when did you realize that you like to make art or draw or whatever?
Um, I think I always knew. Like I remember in kindergarten, we had this little competition of you would try to redraw a page from a storybook, and I would usually win those because of my drawing, and I would draw at home and stuff, and um, I would that was my thing is like I always thought I would draw. And then at some point I was like, man, I actually suck at drawing. Why do people keep telling me I'm good at this? So I'm just like, I switched to something else, and I'm like, still in the art world, but I'm just like, no, not drawing. I think in high school is when I got more into ceramics because we actually had ceramic classes, and people would pay me to do their projects for them, like make the shoe that's out of clay, make this out of clay. People would pay me to just make it for them. And I tend to be the kind of person who can do things in like 2 minutes, where other people it'll take them an hour. So I'm just like, here, da-da-da, finish that, finish like five of them and mine in one class period. So I think that's where I kind of found my footing because I'm definitely, I don't know. I feel like the way I hear about how my parents were in school and how they were when they were young, I think I'm almost like a perfect mix of both of them, where they're both just kind of class clowny. Like, so I was also just like the silly one all the time too, just extrovert at school, introvert at home type deal.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I had always kind of seen you as an introvert, and I didn't
Hmm.
know that you had that extrovert side of you at school.
Yeah.
Um, so did you and your friend group, were they creative too, or is it just like mixed match?
No, I I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't. I think when I think about how I was in school, I definitely hung out with any and everybody. I don't think I was ever mean to people. I don't think somebody, could say like, "No, you bullied me," and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know." But when I think about school, I'm like, I don't think I bullied anybody, and I think I talked to everybody. I think I was nice to everybody, and depending on what year it was, I feel like my main friend group always changed.
Yeah,
Usually, usually it tended to be like the popular girls who just like to talk crap about people. Cause I don't know, I like that kind of stuff. It's funny to me.
oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, do you think that came from hanging out with Milagro so much?
Um, I don't know. And honestly, sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, because I feel like when I was a kid, my sister was pretty mean to me, and so something made me attracted to like meaner kind of females who are just like had so much attitude. I don't know. Something in me was just like, because it's almost like I want to be that. Like when I was younger, I definitely did not like go back and forth with people. I would be more apologetic and like meek and like not trying to get in anybody's way. And then I would see these girls who are just like, no, you're not gonna do that. No, I'm not gonna do this. No, and I'm just like, wow, I want to be like you. So I feel like I hung out with people who were like that just because I'm like, gosh, I love this energy. I need it in my own life.
No, I feel you, and that eventually, for me, translated as well. I mean, but you think about it. I mean, well, first of all, like I said, your parents are, super strong, and and like think about the women around us, like mom.
Mhm.
She didn't take no shit. Like the
Yeah.
Alala, she didn't take shit. Like little
Mhm.
Laura. My mom was probably the meekest one as far as like the women in
Yeah.
our family. And but yeah, like you've only met my girlfriend a couple of times, right?
Yeah, just a few. Yeah.
Okay, but she's a tough chick too. So like, I think I can see how that happens.
Yeah, I think a lot of Stianana rubbed off on me. I was like, I think a lot of her is inside of me because that's how I was when I was a kid. I'm just like, I don't want to say anything.
Yeah, yeah, she's definitely as far like an outlier as far as the women in our family.
Hmm.
Um, and it's interesting, like seeing the dynamics of like women in our Mexican family. Have you ever reflected on that or like?
Mm, no, not really. There's only a few instances that I can think of where I really see the way the women on my dad's side of the family are compared to my mom's side of the family, which I don't know. I wouldn't even say there's really that big of a difference. I feel like the dynamics are how you see it in TV, cooking, cleaning, and talking shit. That's about it.
Yeah, yeah. I always wondered like the dynamics, but I guess in general, like the the United States is kind of patriarchal. So
Hmm.
as far as like the Mexican American family and then the Black American family, I guess patriarchal with the matriarch that's the
Yeah.
actual running shit. Like,
I feel like that's how it always is. Is like on TV, on screen, in the media, it's the men who are running things. But in actuality, it's like women who are doing everything. That's how, even in just my own home, I'm like, my mom took care of everything. My mom paid the bills. My mom organized everything. My mom knew what everything was. My mom was the one signing documents, filling out paperwork. My dad just had to go to work and bring home the check, and then my mom did everything else. So I feel like that's how it is for most families. It's probably like the mom does like everything. The
yeah,
dad's like the facade patriarch.
right,
He gets his opinion in at the end, kind of deal.
right, and even
Yeah,
sometimes that gets like kicked out.
yeah, it's kind of like okay, sure.
Oh man, that's so funny. So so I guess you growing up in in Gary, Indiana.
Hmm.
It's besides all the other things it's known for, it's known as like a blue collar, steel mills working
Hmm.
area. I definitely got a lot of that programming. When did you realize that you were going to take a creative route as opposed to what seems to be pushed on us, like science, technology,
Yeah.
et
Hmm.
so on and so forth?
Um, I think it was when I tried to take AP Bio and I was failing from the first week. And I was like, I'm not even that smart. Why am I trying to go to med school? I'm like, I would flunk. So I was like, I should do something I actually really enjoy. I'm like, God, imagine me failing like my first semester and having to start over, do more than 4 years. That would suck. I'm like, no, I'll just go to art school, make my straight A's.
Hell
This
yeah.
is where I belong.
That's really early. So AP Bio, that's got to be like what, senior, junior year?
Yeah. That was, I think that was senior year, like first semester senior year. And I came in and we had like a test the first week. We were supposed to be reading the book over summer. And I was like, oh my God, I
Oh
just bought this
shit.
book last week. And I was just like, and I asked him, I was like, okay, if getting an F on this test, will I be able to get back to at least a B if I pass every other test? And he was like, yeah. So I was like, okay, okay, I'll stay in it. Second test come around, F. And I'm like, okay, time for me to drop this class.
Oh
And
man.
yeah, I dropped that. I dropped math. I'm like, why am I taking math? And I had like three, four electives each semester my senior year. I was taking drawing, ceramics, and weightlifting like both semesters, and then only had like two serious classes. And I'm like,
That's
yeah,
dope.
this is the schedule I wanted.
That's dope. Yeah, I mean that's awesome that you learned it like at a young, relatively young. I guess in relation to college, that's kind of
Hmm.
late because most of the time people are like, "This is what I'm going to do. These are all the
Yeah.
classes." Because I remember for sure, like my senior year, I was like, "I'm going to be going into engineering." Um, so that's good that you noticed it early.
Hmm. Yeah, I was really fooling myself. I'm like, it's better to jump out of a lie quicker than to try and stay in it and be like, no, I'll get good at it. Because I'm like, no, I won't. I remember you have to fill out like college paperwork, and I'm on there like, yeah, I'll go to Princeton. I'll go to Dartmouth. Why are you lying to yourself? I'm just like, man, that's embarrassing.
Yeah. Although, I'm glad that you realized it because obviously you didn't like it. But I would say that if you did want to do it, I believe that you could have
Hmm.
because just because anyone can, I honestly believe anyone can do anything. So
Yeah.
as far as if you ever did want to switch and go like, I just want you to think that you're smart and I don't want you to think that you're not smart. And obviously math and science doesn't necessarily mean you're
Yeah.
smart. So like,
Hmm.
anyway, I'm just want to give you that little confidence boost that you could have done it, but fuck them.
Yeah. No, trust me. I still think about it. I'm like, man, I'm gonna be poor for a minute. Maybe I should have went to med school. I'm like, maybe I should have kept my nose in the books because I'm like, God, this is gonna suck. Or at least took a few classes, and I'm like, okay, I can marry somebody who's gonna be a doctor. I can deal with that too. So, but oh well, I'm here now.
No, that's dope. I mean, I kind of wish I would have noticed earlier on that I like the creative side more than technical, and it's a little different situation for
Hmm.
me, but but yeah, I'm glad it worked out the way it did for me and for you too. Um, so going to college, it seemed like you were. I guess now that I'm getting a little more deeper view into the family life, might not be the case, but it seemed like you and your dad and your family were pretty tight knit. Like,
Hmm.
is that true?
I feel like there was really no other choice but to be tight knit. Like my dad doesn't have any friends. My mom doesn't really have any friends. So once you're off of work, once I'm home from school, we're all together. Now we are not gonna all be together in one room. We definitely didn't watch TV together. But some and we didn't really eat dinner together either. God, it sounds sad, but it really wasn't that bad. It's really not that bad. On paper, it seems bad, but it really wasn't. I'm just like, that's how we were.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, as far as like the way that we saw it, I saw it. Y'all look, super tight knit. So,
Hmm.
how was it leaving the house to go to college?
Um, I don't know. I feel like I have a hard time like processing those situations, like those typical situations where people are like, "Oh my God, it's so emotional. I'm homesick." I feel like I can't process those emotions. Like if I think about it now, when I left to college, I was just like, "See you guys later. I'll be back." Like that kind of attitude. I'm just like, I don't know. I can't even with graduation. I'm just like, I graduated. Here we are. So I don't know. It wasn't. it wasn't like emotional for me at all. I don't think. I was just like, you know, I'm still in Indiana. We're 2 hours away, so not a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, Indy's a little farther than where I went. I went to obviously Purdue, but
hmm
you kind of like I remember it feeling like so far away until like eventually it's like, oh, dude, I'm literally in the backyard, like
Yeah,
so close.
literally. Yeah.
So yeah, but so I mean, college for me was kind of like a culture shock. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, and I kind of went
hmm
in the similar mindset where it's like, okay, I'm gonna come visit you every once in a while,
Yeah.
like chill. So as far as the new place, lived in Gary for so long. How was it
hmm
adjusting to like living in a big city? I mean, quote unquote, compared to
Yeah. hmm
you know and
um,
going to school.
yeah. I feel like I took a lot of my habits with me where I immediately got a job as soon as I got down there in like early August because I did like a 2 week program before you actually start school.
Hmm.
Um, so I was down there early August and I had already and that was my very first job. I got a job. And from then on, I was working full time. I'm like working crazy shifts. I'm like 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. Then I'll do like an 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then I'll do it all over again. And it was crazy. I failed one class my first semester, and I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing full time. I just like yeah, I just went into work mode. I was just working all the time, and then I'll go to school, then I'll go home and sleep, and then I'll do it all over again the next day. And I don't. That's kind of been my process the past 4 years is school, work, home, school, work, home, school, work, home. Um, and I'm trying to break that cycle. I feel like I really can get out of that now that I'm graduating, because I really don't want to do that anymore. Like, it's just sad to me. I'm just like just working school. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, so that's crazy that you were working so much. So how did you figure out that balance over time, or was it
Um,
just that after that first semester you went straight?
I feel like I got into that job and I was just so like quiet and nice. I would just go into that job and I was like, "Oh, we can't have our phones. Okay, I'll leave it in my locker downstairs. I won't have my phone at all." And then argue with anybody, then like talk to anybody, like talk over anybody, then just did my job and like did a good job at it. And I just remember I just had the meanest manager ever. I'm just like, oh my gosh, she was ridiculously mean to me for no reason. She would yell at me all the time for nothing. And it was that moment that kind of made me switch, especially after she had like transferred. I was just like, there was something in me that made me just switch and to be this person who's not just getting pushed over. And that next semester came around and I'm like, hey, I can't work this much. I failed a class. I'm like, I'm going to work 2 days a week, period. And that's how it's going to be. And I'm like, I know you're not going to fire me, so deal with it. And that's just how it's been ever since. And I quit that job because it was so terrible. Food and beverage is the worst career you can get into. I'm like, oh my God, it sucks being a server. I
Oof.
had to get out of there. Yeah, I did that for 2 years, and then now I work at the museum, which is really chill. I just work in the gift shop, and it's boring because I'm just there by myself. There's really not that many people around, and but I like my coworkers. It's a calm setting, and I'm just like, I just gotta do this until I finally get out of here. And I'm like, I can hold on to this. But yeah, I'm just like, I'm not I'm not in that zone anymore where people can just like tell me to do something and I'll do it. I'm gonna argue with you a little bit more or just be like, no, I'm not gonna do that. No, I don't wanna do that. You know?
Hell yeah, that's good because people get caught up in these jobs. I mean, we were kind of raised to like work real hard and just be a good employee and do your job and go home. But
Yeah.
it's we put these corporations on a pedestal and these companies on a pedestal, but what's most important is us, so they could fuck off.
Hmm. Yeah, they literally don't care about you at all.
Yeah.
And the kind of jobs that I've worked, which is just at the museum and then at the hotel, I'm like, they are not the kind of jobs where they're gonna fire me because I called out. I'm like, I could sit here and eat a pizza at my desk. They're not gonna fire me. I'm like,
Yeah.
who else is gonna do this besides me? I'm
Yeah.
just so it's also that too, where it's just like it takes a minute for you to get fired, for them to like fire you. So I'm just like, why do I care so much? I'm like, they don't care about me. They'll find somebody else, and I'm not doing anything crazy. Like I'm not inviting people into my job and having them like eat for free type stuff. So I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. That's awesome. Um, so you've navigated to like be having a work school balance. What kind of
Mhm.
classes do you take for that major? Is sculpture is the name of the
Hmm.
major? Yeah.
Yeah, sculpture and ceramics. I a lot of the classes that they require from you are studio. But my biggest struggle, like minus the studios, was just the regular general education courses and like the art history courses. Those were the ones that were giving me the most trouble because it's hard to switch your brain from being creative and making things to now I need to figure out the probability of a parabola of a circle. I'm like, I don't understand this. So there was always this like separation, and that was one of my biggest grudges with being in school. I'm like, why do I have to take so many general education? Like, why do I have to take math right now? Why am I taking a social science right now? I'm like, I could be in the studio right now, you know? So I don't know. That was always my thing with school.
Nice. And yeah, it's really hard. I didn't realize how hard it was to switch from creative to technical because honestly, to be quite honest, I didn't do that great in college. Like
Hmm.
I graduated with a civil engineering degree, but like if you had me do any of the important calculations, I would be pretty fucked. Um, and I
That
was
would have
always
been me. Yeah, that would have been me.
exactly, yeah, and I was always like, um, I don't know. I went through like a rapping phase. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember?
I do remember. I remember the music. Yeah, I do
Yes.
remember that.
So I was always writing like raps and then having to do homework, and I didn't realize that those two sides of my brain were clashing. Anyway, so and I definitely noticed it now. Um, but as far as like besides the technical like gen ed classes,
Hmm.
now that you're at a school for art, like the studio time that you're doing, was that ever challenging, like learning the techniques and stuff for sculpture?
Um, for me, I would say no. I feel like it was almost this was what I was supposed to do. I think I'm best at working with my hands using tools. Like I think is just the simplest thing for me. I can easily understand using tools and materials. The studios were never my biggest struggle. I feel like even if I worked like a 12-hour shift, I would still find a way to go up to the school and be in the studio and get my projects finished. That was always the most important thing to me. All 4 years was finishing my projects, and always just being in the studio. I just loved being in the studio to where my junior and senior year, where we have our own studios and we have our own personal areas, like I'm just always there. Like my teachers, they knew me to be there from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., 4 days a week, and then do my job on the weekend and then still come up there afterwards. they just knew I was always at the school, always creating things, always making, and probably like 2 assignments behind on my English homework. So,
Wow, that's really cool. That's dedication.
hmm
Like
yeah,
I couldn't imagine spending that much time being creative at that age because that's like when your brain is like the most free, I guess, at that age.
hmm yeah.
Uh,
I don't know. I just love what I do. Like love what I've been doing the past 4 years. And while I kind of have my struggles with it, especially like terrible professors who don't motivate you with your artwork, and you got to sit there and try to motivate yourself. I still was like, oh well, whatever. I'll be here all day trying to learn something, you know.
that's really cool. Your first day in studio versus your last day in studio, what were you making and how did that change?
Mm, First day in the studio, I was making crap. Okay, I was making awful things that shouldn't be called art. That is what I was making. It was bad because the way they set up the school is that you take foundation courses. Like your entire 4 years is already planned out for you, and you're taking these foundation classes, and you're just working with like cardboard and painting, and I'm just like, okay, this is awful. Like, and all of my stuff from that first year of school, I'm like, man, this stuff sucks. Why? The only things I can remember that were good from my freshman year of school were my video art stuff, and probably just because it was just editing on the computer and not having to buy fucking 200 tweezers and skewers and having to glue them together. I'm like, oh my god, this is like an eighth grade project. So then, versus now, where I'm actually like in my ceramics classes, in my sculpture classes, where I'm using materials I want to use. I know how to use all the machinery. I know how to use everything. I'm like, okay, I'm actually making stuff I like to make. Like, I can do the kilns by myself. I can do the glazing by myself. Everything I can do by myself. So I'm like, okay, everything I'm actually making I like. If I look back on all the stuff I made then, I'm like, oh god, who let me in here? Like even the portfolio to get in the school, if I look at it now, I'm like, oh my god, this is horrible. Who let me into this school?
Oh my
It,
gosh.
yeah, so it is definitely a huge difference from then to now.
Nice. I mean, that's what I expected, but that's, as far as like looking back, it's sometimes kind of tough, but does it kind of bring back a nostalgia? Like do you like remember like sitting there making that, you
hmm
know, bad piece of art?
Um, no, I
No.
want to forget that. And I think I'd like to keep it that way. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. No, that's awesome. I was always really intimidated with like pottery. I had done some in like middle school and high
hmm
school. So as far as like sculpture and clay and pottery goes, like I know there's like different ways to do it, right? You got
Yeah.
the table that turns, and you got you roll the clay out. Like
hmm
what's your favorite? What do you do the most?
I would say I would do hand building the most, and slab building, coil building. When I first started the wheel, because I didn't have any wheel throwing classes in high school, so my first experience was in college, and I didn't really like it at first. I was just like, ugh, I hate pottery. I'm like, why am I making this crap? And just like then, I would say hand building, but my senior and like towards the end of my junior year, I got back into throwing more, and I was just like, okay, I actually like doing like pottery in these classes. Like, so with my ceramics, I kind of stuck to pottery, And I'm just like, whatever. My teacher doesn't even care. We don't even critique. He hardly talks to us. So I'm just like, I just do pottery in this class to get my A, and all my sculptural stuff would just be in sculpture, where I had teachers who would actually even care what I was doing. So yeah, I would say hand building is preferred. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So hand building, that's like that's essentially like you're taking lumps, putting it together, and forming it. Is that kind of like what?
Yeah. It honestly depends. You can take like thin little pieces and turn it into a whole big thing. You can start with a big block and carve away at it and work reductively. Um, I would say I tended to work like that, was starting with a basic shape of a chunk and then carving away at it to get what I wanted from it and then hollowing the inside towards the end. But if I was making like a vase out of hand building instead of throwing it, then I'm using like slabs and already having the walls be really thin and having making the foot and just then putting everything together.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean it's like 'cause it's a lot of different ways, and it's hard to work with like clay. That's mostly what you work with, right? Clay.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Um, and so did you learn any other like sculpture? Because now when I think sculpture, like historically, you take like sometimes you think like wood, sometimes you think like granite, and you like chiseling at it. Did
Yeah.
you mess with any of that?
I wish we had stone carving classes. That would have been cool. That would have been great. But no, I didn't get to experience that. Sculpture was mostly your mold making, so working with like wax and resin, and then woodworking, doing the metal shop things, lots of different types of fabrication, and then once a semester we'll have a foundry where we're pouring metal into molds. So I I've been able to be involved with two of them where we're pouring bronze, which is
Wow.
really fun. And so I would say I'm kind of somewhere in between liking clay and metal the most. I really like being in the metal shop. I kind of like welding and doing all those things, but it's when it came to school, it was just a time thing a lot of times where I'm taking all these gen eds, and especially because of the pandemic now, my entire schedule is really short. So I have to probably make most of my things out of clay because that's the quickest thing to do is make it out of clay, let it dry, put it in the kiln, and what I want is already there, you know?
That's cool. That's cool. Do you have any of your clay sculptures in that room with you?
In this room, no, I don't. Everything is in a box. We had to move out.
Oh
So
yeah.
everything is boxed up and almost on its way out. Yeah.
That's cool. So that's all going. Are you moving back up with Theo David and Sonia?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be going back up there in July probably. It depends on how this fabrications job works out if I'll go back home. So yeah, the plan so far is just sending everything back home.
Nice. Um, so I wanted to talk about that fabrications job in a sec, but I guess real quick, delving more into the whole COVID of it all.
Mhm.
I mean, you're going into you're graduating you're finishing your junior year, and that's when
Mhm.
it's COVID's hitting. How was that whole situation in Indy?
It was interesting because we had a student, Joy, who was from China, who was kind of hearing about these things, just like a little bit later than like kind of hearing it from her mom and everything back home. And you're hearing how hard it's being on them in December, and then we're still over here doing things, no masks on, no safety things, and then you hear it's now New York is starting to shut down, and it's like, oh gosh, like how soon will it come here now? And then in March is like everything is shutting down. They're like, now we got to end school. Now everything needs to go online, and we had to cancel shows, cancel everything, and my job closed, and I had to go back home until like July, I think, until my job opened back up, and it was very interesting. It definitely paused my artistic life. I didn't really work on anything at all during that time, um, except for towards the end of our semester when we were doing a Zoom. I kind of discovered more of my photography side, um, taking photos with my family and just taking photos in general. So now I'm like sculpture, ceramics, and photography. So I'm like going all over the place now, which I enjoy. So that's probably one positive thing that really happened was me getting more into taking photos and being creative with 2D work. Um, since I never really liked 2D work, I was just like, this is great. I kind of like photography now.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, it's kind of like this. What is it? Necessity is the mother of innovation. You ever heard that? No.
Yeah.
Okay. But essentially, like as with a creative mind, you kind of like sounds like you had to be creative and you figured out something else that
hmm
you were able to express yourself with.
Yeah.
Um, no, that's really cool. So so you couldn't do any ceramics while you're at home. So you
Yeah.
were going to school from home. Like what did classes look like from
At
home?
at that time, um, I was only taking ceramic sculpture and a literature class. Um, and I remember struggling really bad with my literature. Like I all of a sudden going online, I was just like, I can't even process what we're doing right now. Like I just got so behind towards the end. But luckily she was very nice and like giving me extensions and stuff like that. And then ceramics, our teacher didn't talk to us at all. It was like, okay, that's the end of the semester. So it's just like ceramics was whatever. Like ceramics was just whatever. We already know all of us, like 13 of us who are graduating in ceramics this semester. We know how our teacher is. We're like, we know him, so it's like whatever. We know you're lazy. We got it. And then with sculpture, the three teachers that we had, really our main, like our head sculpture teacher, he really did try to keep in contact with all of us and keeping us creative, keeping us talking with each other, and keeping us working, which is really nice. I think he was probably the main motivator for me to not just be like sitting at home and watching TV. Um, because it was very easy for me to slip into that because both of my parents were what do you call it, essential workers. Both of them had to go to work. So I'm the one who's like always at home having nothing to do, whereas they were always gone. So having my teacher just always there reminding me like to keep working, keep going for what I'm doing and doing all these things was I was really grateful for, and just also grateful for my parents because they were involved with my photos. Like they were helping me create my pieces and they were in them with me, and I'm really thankful for that too, that I had parents who were like, okay, sure, we'll post for your pictures instead of being like, no, I refuse. So, yeah.
That's that's dope. No, and I guess it helps that your parents are pretty attractive. Like like that, like just being completely objective. Like they're pretty
Yeah.
good looking people. Like, yeah, so that's nice.
I know. If my parents were ugly, I'd be like, okay, I'm screwed. I have nothing to take a picture. No, I don't think I'd do that, but.
No, that's funny. No, that's good. Oh gosh, that's funny. So when did they let you come back to Indy, or like I guess the school opened back up? When did that happen? Or
When
is
did
it
what
not open
happen?
yet?
For
Like
school?
yeah.
So the school, when did it open? For that first semester, starting back in August, I think you couldn't be on campus until September. And then it also ended early and ended like just before December was starting. And then you had this extended winter break, and you didn't get back to school for that last semester until February. And then
Wow.
you're like in school all the time. And then it was just everything in our building was moved around. So everything is like 6 to 10 feet apart. You're wearing a mask all day. Like you're rubbing everything down after you use it. You're signing in and signing out of rooms. And then our school, especially being like premier medical, like all the IU schools, like being the medic kind of schools, like they were doing testing every week. Like they had the facilities and the capabilities to be even innovating that kind of stuff. So they're testing their students every day. And then as soon as the vaccine came out, they're offering the vaccine. Like they do Pfizer at my school, so you're like doing that too. So yeah, they were. I feel like my school was pretty on top of it. They emailed their students every week, like how many people at the school have COVID versus last week. What are our numbers looking like? And they were always fairly low. And I think the funniest thing was just how empty campus was, and just how many people didn't need to be at the school, and like how much you could just do online. It was almost like mostly art school kids who would now have to be at the school versus everybody else, which was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean everything else is just like most of the other things are just book learning. Like just read a
Mhm.
book and like show up to the lecture at Zoom and
Yeah.
turn in your thing digitally. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, and I remember I was taking summer classes, so those were all online, and I'm just like, man, I'm so thankful I did not take any other major besides art. This is sad. I'm like, I cannot sit on a computer all day. I would lose my mind. I'm just like, this is awful. And then you have the teachers who are not like Zoom capable.
oof.
And most of my teachers, if I was taking a gen ed course, it wasn't even online meetings. Everything was on Canvas, like the student, portal to turn in your assignments. They'll just tell you everything to do on there. You actually never saw your teacher, never heard them talk, never anything. And those are also the worst. I'm just like, whatever. I guess I have to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's awesome. That like an empty camp is kind of cool. Like it's as far as as far as me being an introvert, it'd be kind of cool to have like hella like hella space. Uh, but yeah, so I guess so you were talking about a fabrication job. What's that?
hmm So fabrications is basically just um, you're just making things. Like fabrication just means you're making things to for other people for something. And at the museum, like they have a fabrications department. They're the ones making frames. They're making the displays. They're making wall hangings. They're making all these things. That's all of that is fabricating. Basically, it's just a fancy word for making shit. And that's kind of what I want to do. For a long time, I thought I would really enjoy teaching college, and I was just going to go to grad school right away. But looking into this fabrications job, I'm just like, man, this sounds great. I don't have to talk to people except for like my two other coworkers, and I'm just making shit. I'm like, this sounds great. I'm like, this is the kind of job for me. So I'm excited to see if that actually turns into something, or if it doesn't, whatever, you know.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty cool. When do you find out when you if you whether you get it or not?
I won't find out until July. I start working with them in 2 weeks. Just doing an internship and just helping them with things, but I won't find out until July if they'll actually keep me in that department, and I'll just stay there. So,
Nice. Well, it sounds like you're a pretty promising candidate with how much, how much time you've put into to making shit, as you say.
I hope so. I hope I sound promising. It's definitely difficult. Like sometimes I feel like you don't see sexism a lot. Like sometimes I'm like, "Ugh, it's not that bad." But then I think back at things that I've dealt with in my life and think back about other jobs, and I'm just like, man, sexism is not in my favor. I'm just like, they'll take literally any job. They'll just take a guy over you anytime. So I'm just like, man, if a guy came in here and just swooped in over me, they would instantly have it, even if we have the same amount of experience. They'll just have it because the department now it's all white men, and I'm just like a short little 5 foot black girl coming in there and work, and there, yeah, sure, we'll see. So yeah,
That's tough. Yeah. Yeah, it's a bitch. I mean, like I have no, you know, inkling of knowledge as to how it is to be a woman, but as far as like being, at least a little bit woke, you could see it, as a
hmm,
I see it. I've seen it,
yeah,
and I've worked at, all the companies that I've worked for were mostly white men,
yeah,
and so either seeing those like little microaggressions or seeing how they pick candidates, definitely. And when it was a girl, that there's an, not always, but there has been conversations of how like attractive she is, because I was in sales. Like if they're,
hmm,
so that's sexism isn't in and of itself, right? So
yeah,
it's a bitch.
yeah, it is. Like I don't know. I think it's kind of funny when I think about that kind of stuff. I'm just like, ugh, I have to deal with it. I have no
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, it's gross. But and so I guess, have you kept your mind open about other things? Like have you like other parts of the country? Like Indiana is, like,
Yeah,
I'm living in Houston and seeing other parts of the country. I realize like Indiana's pretty fucking white. Like, do you
yeah,
ever think of somewhere else?
yeah. I think about somewhere else all the time. I'm just like hoping life takes me where it wants to take me. I'm really not trying to plan too much into the future. I'm trying to keep it real simple. And I'm like, if I gotta stay in India for a minute, that's okay. Eventually I'll get somewhere, you know. And I do want to travel even outside of the country. I've always thought about like moving outside of the country. But sometimes I'm like, man, America sucks. But then I'm like, man, I like living here. So it's that struggle too, where I'm just like, everywhere else seems so nice when you're just watching it on TV or reading articles about it, and then like actually living there, I feel like will be so different and so crazy. Moving state to state is one thing, but moving to a whole different country, especially if it's a different language, I'm like, oh gosh, it would be culture shock like crazy. So yeah, but I'm keeping it open.
That's good. Yeah, yeah. I kind of I obviously had an open mind to moving, and living here in Guatemala is definitely, you realize like how good you have it in
Hmm.
America. Like I live in like the nicest apartment complex in the nice, like very nice part of town, and there's still like little things that I'm like, oh, if I was in America, this would be like, this would be a whole lot better.
Yeah.
But you get spoiled. You don't realize how spoiled we are.
Exactly. Yeah. Really though, just the littlest things. Even I know people who are from different countries, and like the bathroom, you have to bring a bucket in and pour the water into the toilet. I'm like, oh my god. In America, there's a room already. Oh my god, I just gotta go in. It's crazy to think about how much stuff is just so different.
Yeah, yeah, that's where, I don't know if we ever told you, but growing up, my other grandparents lived in very poor conditions. Like their house were made out of, they
Mm-hmm.
made their house out of bricks, and then the top was like corrugated metal, and like we had to take the
Mm.
bucket and go and flush the toilet like that.
Yeah.
But that that's like the worst conditions I've seen. Like our place is pretty modern, so like
Yeah.
my issues is like my Wi-Fi is fucking slow. It sucks.
God, this Wi-Fi.
Yeah, no, definitely blessed out here. But because anyway, so as far as like, besides getting a job, which is good, I don't want to
Hmm.
like shit on getting a job. Like that's dope that you have something lined, like at least something, a possibility lined up.
Yeah.
But I guess on an individual basis, like what kind of stuff are you like wanting to make, or do you want to make your own art, like create your own expressions and stuff like that?
I do. I still want to kind of be a studio artist and still kind of be in a gallery state of mind where I'm creating to have my work be shown. Like I've known a lot of people who say like, "Oh, I don't care if nobody sees my stuff. Art isn't for others; it's for me." And I'm just like, "Well, that's not me. That's not why I paid $20,000 to go to education for 4 years." Okay, I pay for it for people to see my things and do things that people can enjoy. So I still think about that stuff, but I also just think about a lot of things. Like there's so much I want to do and so much I want to try, even if it's not necessarily related to art. Like I want to learn how to like fight. I want to learn how to fly a plane. I want to learn about three other languages. I'm like I want to learn so much, and I have time. The average lifespan is like 80 years, and if nothing happens, I got time.
Hell yeah.
So I'm like there's so much I want to do, and so much I can let go of if it's just not in the cards for me to do at the moment. Like I can let it go. Like it's 100% fine with me. If it's not for me right now, then that's okay. Then this thing will be for me right now at the moment.
Hell yeah. That's like the best mindset you can have at that age, because
Mhm.
a lot of people, they graduate and they're like, they freak out and like, what am I gonna do? Like I got to start a 401k and bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Like, and they freak the fuck out. And like, it's not bad to have those things. Obviously, like learn, like you can learn as you go, but you're right. You're so young. You have so much time to figure the shit out. And and yeah, learn as much as you can. I mean, that sounds really cool. Like you talking about fighting, like that's a martial art. You forget, like don't
Yeah.
forget that, that's an art too. So that's dope.
Mhm. Yeah. I feel like everything is kind of involved with each other. Um, I don't know where I got this state of mind from. It could just be, I'm in art school surrounded by hippies. But like, just like thinking of things is not linear. Everything's kind of circular. Everything's kind of involved with each other, and it might seem very separated, but it could influence other parts of my life in other aspects in a way I didn't even think about. So I'm like, even if I can't think of a good reason, a great reason as to why I shouldn't stick with just doing my artwork and going down this straight path, if I do this thing that is outside of what I should be doing, it could work tremendously for me and do so many things for my ultimate goals. And you never know. So I'm just like, I'll try it. I'll do it. Whatever.
That's good. Yeah, yeah, and also too. Well, yeah, I have a similar mentality, and even more so now. Like think about it. I'm 20. I decided to change careers at 29 years old.
Hmm.
So I got 7 years on you right now, and I still, you know, I'm still trying new shit. But like everything I've learned in the past, what I'm
Yeah.
realizing now is like I'm not just like a creative, I'm not just an artist. because I was trying to push away that technical side. Like I still knew, even though I got, some C's and some D's, I still got some B's and A's in those classes that I learned. Like the technical side is still there. And then I spent 5 years as a salesman. So now like then all of that is part of me now. So
Mhm.
it's all together. Like there's no one path like for that fits for
Right.
everyone. There's no mold. It's funny that you were
Yeah.
talking about molds earlier. Like we all got our own little mold, specifically to us, right?
Wow, so deep. Man, God, you hit it. You hit it right on the mark.
I guess,
Whoa.
yeah, I definitely feel like one of those hippies. Did you do drugs in college?
No, not really. I feel
No.
like I don't know what it was, but I feel like I've never been attracted to drugs and alcohol a lot. While I definitely started in high school doing weed or doing just drinking alcohol, I'm like besides that I'm just like it's okay. I had like now I'm just like, ugh, I hate drinking. I'm like, this shit is disgusting. Why do you do
Yeah,
this? And then weed, it's like my breath stinks. I'm like, I can't. I don't know. I'm just like, whatever, you know. I'm
I
whatever
feel.
on all that stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I had an experience with like this, like, I don't know, it's like DMT or something like that,
Yeah.
and like I tripped out, and anyway, my brain. I feel like my brain kind of opened up at that point, but otherwise, I don't. It's kind of like art and being creative is kind of like a drug. Like you kind of
Mhm.
like get high on that shit. So I don't really do that much of anything anymore. But that's the reason I asked.
I'm high on life. I don't need drugs. Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's all the same.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm a weird older person, but so like, where do you think about the the state of art in the world right now with like how much technology and
Mhm.
like different kind of things are out there now? Do you ever think about that?
Um, in terms of how technology affects it, I think it's a great thing. I think technology is cool. Like I have no problem with it at all. I A lot of times I hear about the main struggle between art and technology are people who are in illustrations and saying like, "Oh, everything is CGI, everything is like just using the computer," and I'm just like, "This shit looks great." I'm like, it doesn't bother me at all, and I'm like, in terms of with sculptures and ceramics, anything that'll help me not have to pick up a 20-pound bag, thank you. I'm like, anything to pick up all this heavy shit. I'm like, thank you. Like
Yeah.
anything that's gonna stop me from getting cancer from all these fumes.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Blinding me from these sun ray, X-ray lights that are coming off the torches. Like anything that's gonna stop me from dying at 40 from cataracts, from silicosis and lung disease. I'm like, I'm okay with it. Let's keep advancing. Let's keep going with it.
Hell
But
yeah.
yeah, I like it. But in terms of like the art world in general, how it is now, it's getting to a point where I'm just like everything is so Eurocentric and just like white art, and sometimes I feel like it's opening up more, but I try not to stay in the museum scene to where I really know what's going on in there, and that's what kind of motivates me a little to stay in the museum network, in the museum field, so I can be a person who in a small way doesn't have to be a big crazy way where people are writing books about me. I'm not trying to be Gandhi, you know but just like in a small way affecting like how we think about things and how involved people of color and people who have large voices are, instead of having everything that's just Eurocentric and white man art. Like that's literally almost all of it. It's just white man art, you know?
Right. Yeah. Definitely. That definitely. I definitely feel the same as far as like if you scroll back all the way to when I started like my Instagram, I when I realized I was gonna all right put more time drawing and actually learn how to do this, I was like, I'm all the art accounts, all the art I see online is drawings of some white actor, some
Mhm.
white model, some European Shakespeare looking dude. And I'm
Yeah.
like, where like all the brown people? So I've tried mostly to draw almost all brown and black people.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think little things like that, like little things like just one guy deciding to do it because another guy's going to start do it, and you've obviously you know taken initiative to start doing that.
Mhm.
Um, is definitely all those little things count.
Yeah. Yeah. I a lot of my feed, a lot of my inspiration is usually not coming from white people, and it definitely definitely not coming from white people, and mostly not coming from men. I'm like, most of what you're gonna see on my page, most of my inspiration is coming from women of color, and I'm just like, that's the way I want it, and that's the way it's gonna stay. Like, but you can't base that off of like my Instagram discover page. My Instagram discover page is K-pop only, and I'm just like, whatever, this is fine, I can live with this.
You like K-pop?
Yeah, I would say ever since the like quarantine pandemic, I got into it a lot more. Like I used to listen to it very sporadically, because I don't care about music too much where I'm like this a genre heavy. So I'm just like I can listen to music in different languages. This is not a problem. Whatever. I like pop music, so I'm like I can listen to K-pop. And then over like quarantine and just like being at home a lot, I started listening to it a lot more to where I know a lot of groups. I know a lot of their fan names. I read their Reddit pages. I'm just like, okay, I'm into this. So like, my Discover page is literally just like K-pop stuff, K-pop groups, people dancing to K-pop songs. Like that is literally it. And I'm just like, this is cool. Once every once in a while, it's somebody throwing a bowl on the wheel, and I'm like, okay, I can deal with this.
No, that's really cool. Do you have any other like like I know it's not Korean, but like do you get into like anime or manga or like comic stuff?
Yeah, I've always watched. I guess I get it from my dad because my dad likes cartoons, but he's not an anime person, and I've always liked cartoons and anime. I've always watched both ever since I was a kid. So yeah, I'm all into that. That's most of my TV, and I binge watch a lot now. I'm just like I've never watched this much TV in my life until like this past year.
There's so much stuff out there though.
So much, and I'm just like, I never cared until now. I'm just like, I will forget about this in a few years. You know, sometimes I'm like, I think I have like undiagnosed ADHD because I literally cannot concentrate on all this stuff. I'm just like, I need to be doing something with my hands. I cannot just be sitting and watching TV. I'm just like, I'm all over the place. And recently, I've gotten so into it. I'm just like, man, this is crazy. So much TV out there.
Yeah, there's some really cool stuff out there, and like I guess back to the like tech and the futurist stuff like
hmm
in the we're not too far off from putting on those Oculus things and like
Yeah,
being like in the movie and like watching a movie like for first person.
yeah, that would be
So
cool.
yeah.
I try it. My friend the other day was talking about, man, wouldn't it be great if they just put a microchip in your arm and you could do everything with just your arm? And I'm like, no. They're just like, you got your social security card on there, you got your bank cards on there, you can unlock your car, you can turn your house lights on. And I'm like, no, how? Like, why? Why would I
Right.
want that? But yeah, I'm like, hopefully I'll be gone if they start to do that stuff. I'm like,
Yeah,
hopefully I
man.
won't be alive anymore.
That's a slippery slope, man. I agree. That's
Mhm.
you got all that kind of stuff, and then they decide that these type of people are now no longer have a social security. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
now you're it's like the story of like undocumented and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I mean, and there's like, have you ever seen those Neuralink videos?
Neuralink. I don't think so.
Yeah, it's like so Elon Musk, he's creating this Neuralink company where it's essentially what you're talking about. There's a chip in your brain, and you like interact
Yeah.
with technology with it. And they had this, they did it to a monkey, and
Uh huh.
he was playing video games on a screen with his
With his
Neuralink.
mind.
Yeah, with his
Oh my
brain.
god.
Yeah,
No. If Elon Musk is in charge of it, I'm good. No.
yeah,
I'll stay away from it. I think I'm okay.
yeah. That guy's sketch.
Yeah, really, really sketch. I'm like, no. And just the fact of like I'm not even good at video games, so I definitely don't need it. I'm like I would still suck at games even if I'm doing it in my head. I'm
Yeah,
just like so I'm okay. I don't need a chip in my head.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, being able to interact with something with your hands is cool. And they got.
Hmm.
You ever seen those little guns that they have where they put the Oculus on, and
Oh
then you like
yeah.
paint it in 3D and shit?
Hmm. Yeah, I've seen that before. And I'm thankful that they are looking more towards the 2D art world. And I'm like, yeah, stay over there. I'm like, the 3D art world doesn't need you. Just stay over there with that shit. Like, I'm like,
Yeah,
good for them. I don't paint at all. And I don't plan on it either. So I'm like, yeah, you can keep that shit over there.
yeah, nice. No, that's what's up. So do you ever want to mess around with like programs like Blender or anything like that? Because that's still like in front of the computer. It's not really like
Hmm.
being able to move around and stuff.
I don't think so. Like the farthest I go is Procreate, and like doing little illustrations on there. But even then, that is hardly. I I don't feel like I'm that good at 2D. And I'm just like I don't really like it that much doing 2D work. I just feel like I suck at it. And but with painting, I'm like painting sucks. I'm like I hate painting. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, most painters I know are terrible people. So I'm just like, I don't care for painting at all.
Is that
And
like a thing in like the art world? Like painters are assholes?
yeah, that's a huge thing. Painting is like here in the hierarchy. Everything else is like under it, and then painters just have this attitude and this perspective on life that they're just the best. And it's just like, you're painting. I'm actually making it. You can walk around it. I'm like,
Right.
what the hell? This is not that cool. I'm
Man.
like, yeah, but painting just has a huge hierarchy in the art world compared to everything else. Whereas ceramics is like really low on the totem pole. Um, ever since like I can't remember when it really started to happen, where ceramics got really low on the totem pole, but just it's been that way for quite some time though. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that because I started out in painting, and I had no
Mhm.
idea that there was a hierarchy like that.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I feel like there's the painters I hear about at our school, and they're like all terrible, and their teachers are all really mean. And then there's the painters that I know, which are all seem pretty cool, but then they're also like, man, I hate painting. So it's this funny little thing, this little um I don't know, this little environment that happens at art school, which is it's pretty interesting. Like most of the cis males you'll meet at art school are all pretentious and all have a little bit of narcissistic uh like characteristics, and then Like most of the women you meet are always usually pretty chill. It's a whole thing. Like it's crazy to think about now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I guess it. I mean, the same thing with like engineers at a school. Like, there was this weird thing about engineering, and engineers thought they were the shit, like compared to any other major.
Mhm.
And then there was like chemical engineers and aerospace engineers thought they were better than civil and industrial and etc. And so, but at the same time, it's like it is a white male institution and it's kind of built for white males. They never changed it since it was created for white
Mhm.
males. So yeah, so fuck all those institutions in general. Like I could
Yeah.
learn all this shit on YouTube. Like
Literally. Oh my god, I think about that all the time. Where I'm just like, why did I get this degree? I could have did all this at home for free.
no, it's definitely. I mean, it's definitely worth something. Especially for like sculpture. Like you work with your hands, you got to be like kind of have to have someone there.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess just looking back and thinking like, would I ever get a master's in something? Nah, probably not.
Yeah. I I don't know. I still think about it. I'm just like, well, might as well. Why not? Cause I liked art school. I liked being in art school. If I ever wanted to fall back into teaching college, they would want me to anyways, unless I became a super famous, well-known artist. Then to where they're like asking me to teach at their schools. Um, which who knows if that'll happen. I'm like, I won't wait for that. So,
Yeah, and it's kind of like you said that the fact that you're conscious about it, like getting your master, like while getting your masters, you could bring. I've heard of people bringing in um, the more diverse focus. Like I had heard of a Mexican dude who was doing a master's in art, and he, all of the art history was around Eurocentric stuff, and he was like, I'm going to focus on Aztec or like indigenous
hmm
art, and so on. So yeah, I mean, definitely a great path for that career path. That's awesome.
hmm yeah, I'm pretty hopeful about it. Like, I'm not stressing myself out about things too much. You know.
Yeah. Um. So what about? I won't go too much into it. It doesn't sound like you would be like hype on this, but have you heard of NFTs?
NFT. I have no idea what that is.
NFTs, yeah, and it's like I can't. Essentially, it stands for non fungible tokens, and it operates in like the whole cryptocurrency kind of like blockchain realm. Have you ever heard of all that?
You lost me. You lost me at crypto. I don't understand any of that.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's it's a whole thing right now.
Mhm.
And essentially, what it is like this NFT, this non fungible token, this piece of code acts as like a certificate of authenticity, kind of. And
Mhm.
like people are going ham and buying these digital certificates of either digital art or sometimes real art. Like sometimes it coincides with this piece of real art,
Yeah.
physical art. And it's like a bubble right now. People went ham. People are like, there's people selling shit for millions of dollars. Just it's kind of like a tulip bubble right now, but it's gonna go
Mm.
down. It's gonna go down. I think the technology is gonna last long.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I I have no idea in that stuff. I hate dealing with online things. I hate the internet.
yeah,
Like, it's such a disgusting place. I try to stay off of it as much as possible. So I feel like in that way I'm like old. It shows my age. Like, it
yeah,
makes me feel like I'm like 40 or 50 because I'm like I have no idea what you're talking
yeah.
about.
Yeah, I feel you. It's a it can be a dark place,
Mhm.
the internet, and and it's kind of taking over a little bit more and more. So
Yeah. And I know they're really trying to work hard on like updating internet laws and regulations and things like that. And I'm just like, good, thank goodness. I'm like, make the internet go away. How about we do that? Like that would be a better option for me. Let's just end it all.
That's funny. Yeah. Who knows the shit? Yeah. Who knows how far we are from the whole shit ending, right? But
I kind of like living in that area of the world, just the chaos. Like everything's gonna just disappear, shut down in like 5 years. I kind of like living in that chaos. I think it's
yeah,
funny. I just like I like the idea of it. I'm just like, man, what if it really did? I'm like,
I, I talk
whatever.
about it all the time. My girlfriend Christine, she hates it when I say shit like that.
Hmm.
I'll be like, I'll say shit like, God damn, I hope human beings go extinct soon. Like we're the
Literally.
fucking worst.
Really. I was riding in the car with my friend the other day, and we're just driving, and there's so much traffic. I'm like, my God, where's Thanos when you need him? I'm just like, why? Why is there so many of us? I'm just like, we are so terrible. Like, we are a terrible animal on this planet. Like, we have done almost nothing that makes this planet better. I'm just like, we could go, and all the other animals would be like, thank God.
Thank God,
Like,
yeah.
I'm just like, God,
We're literally a parasite on the planet. Like
literally.
it's not good. Like we are a sickness to it. Anyway, I mean, I love people. Like people are dope. I don't want to like.
I hate you guys, but I love you. I guess. No, yeah, I get that because I feel that way all the time. I'm just like, man, this would be great if a fucking hurling ball came from the sky and just blew this bitch up.
Yes.
I'll be like, yeah, okay. Like,
Thank God. Oh gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, that's so funny.
yeah, one can
Well,
dream.
I know, right? Well, yeah, I won't take too much more of your time. It's been great just hanging out and catching up with you. It's been so long since we talked.
I know it's been even longer since we've seen each other in person.
Yeah,
Like, it's been forever. Yeah,
yeah,
but
it's
it's nice
been
though.
yeah, it's been good chilling with you. Anything you want to like promote or talk about before we hop off?
Um, no, I suck at everything. I'm like, I don't do anything. I'm just going home. I have nothing to promote.
Okay. Dope. Well, I mean, if you're ever doing like a gallery show or whatever, I'm not like I said, I started this 2 weeks ago, so I'm not gonna have no audience or nothing right yet.
Promote to your two viewers, me
Right.
and you.
But one day
Okay.
I might. And if that's the case, and if you want to promote something or just hang out and catch up, I'm like, for me, this is like an exercise in creativity. I'm making, a little story from someone that I like. And
Hmm.
so if we can do it again, that'd be dope.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. This was great. I was worried it was gonna be super awkward, but I'm like, I'm like, okay, this is cool.
I'm glad. I'm glad. I really hope. I really try not to be awkward, even though I'm kind of an awkward dude sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this was great.
Cool. Well, thanks again.